welcome back to Unspec. I'm Joey, and today we have a very special episode. We're covering two new releases, J. Kelly and Train Dreams. But first, I want to cover some of the biggest news to ever grace the industry that just dropped as of recording within the last 24 hours, but as of uploading, probably within the last couple days. But before we get into that, just some housekeeping. I'm alone this week, mainly because, I don't know anyone who's seen J. Kelly or Train Dreams. We're just going to talk. It's probably going to be a shorter episode and just give some basic thoughts on those films because I think they deserve talking about. And also, I did break my promise for the one person who probably made it to the end of our last episode. I promised that I would be back last week covering Wicked, and I did not. So I will make no more promises. I'll probably talk about Wicked during awards coverage sometime in the new year. But also, as I mentioned, I was working on stuff, so I knew that I was going to be kind of stretched for time to work on the podcast and this project. But it all went well, and I'm super excited for December. There's a lot of great releases, so I'm excited to just get right into it. So the Netflix Warner buyout, obviously bad, obviously horrible. When we're seeing consolidation of corporate powers, it's never a good thing as a consumer, or even as a person. Consumer is such a depersonalized word, but we should never be having to weigh the lesser of two evils between Paramount and Netflix. Yet we are. I think if I'm being optimistic, I think this is the lesser of two evils. And in our discussion, I'm going to talk about why I think this Netflix buyout is bad, and why I think Paramount would arguably be even worse. I think one thing just off the top too is that fundamentally they're different deals. Netflix is wanting to buy the studio and streaming assets of Warner, whereas Paramount wants the whole thing because they want all the linear, cable, traditional television channels, including CNN, because of MAGA interests at the top of Paramount. And they want to have control of CNN and basically disassemble that. And then we'll get into more reasons, but just off the top, I think that the difference in what they want is very interesting. But to kind of give some context, I think we need to go into the history of Warner a little. So it was bought I want to say 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago. And then it was Time Warner for the longest time. And then I'm man, I should have done some research here. But, we're just being casual. I would say probably in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Time Warner split up. Warner was bought by AT&T. And so they own them forever. And then in the late 2010s, the studio was not doing well, hemorrhaging money, and then they sold it to Discovery. And so probably for the last 40 years, Warner has been on this crash course, bouncing from owner to owner to owner, with each owner kind of stripping them for all their worth until it's become this unsustainable studio, which is why it was sold to Discovery back, I think it was, I want to say 2022 now. It was sold back in 2022 to Discovery by AT&T. And I think, right, obviously that was very interesting at the time. Discovery is not the kind of brand or company you would think could buy Warner Brothers, but really it was at the helm of David Zaslav, who had turned it into this mega profitable production arm, mainly focused on reality content. And they bought it with the sole purpose of fixing up the studio, fixing up the linear channels, which now include all of the Discovery channels, and then trying to package them separately to sell within a few years, which is where we're at now. So like Warner has been kind of a dead man walking in that way, at least since 2022 when it was sold to Discovery. So we've been on an inevitable path to this point, to this day, for a while now. Um, I think now that we're here, it's pretty like it's pretty dire. Um, but yeah, so that kind of gets to the point of Paramount was just like, whatever, we want both. We're just gonna keep everything together. We want all of it. Whereas Netflix just wants the studio, which would be like Warner Brothers Studio, Animation, and HBO, not including any of the channels. And I think that with the year that Warner has had in theaters, people really had hope that maybe like something could have been done. Like they did such a good job. They almost did too good of a job fixing up the studio and repackaging it. It almost feels like, okay, like we don't want to lose this. Like this could be sustainable. Um, but that's probably not in the interest of, the people who are going to make money at the very top. Um, but yeah, I'm very interested to see how they restructure. There's a lot of talk about with the Netflix buyout, um, how that's gonna go. I think there's a strong possibility an unfathomable amount of jobs will be lost, which is like, I mean, that's horrible. We saw it back when Disney bought Fox. I would say this is even at a bigger scale than that. And it's just really like upsetting and unimaginable to think about. I think not only on corporate side, I think there's gonna be less production. So it's just, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty dire. Um, but I'm gonna try to be like a little optimistic and like how could this work? Like a little. Where it's like I'm gonna start just with, will Netflix push into theatrical? Um, I think like if you look at some quotes by the CEO, Ted Sarandos, he has said some truly evil statements about theatrical, like just things that are not based in reality in terms of like theatrical being a dead mode. But I really do think that the acquisition of IP, which I mean, I hate that like term to describe characters and ideas, but I think the acquisition of all this huge IP could really force him to reconsider if they aren't already. I think we're already seeing reconsiderations with like it feels like they got bullied into putting the Stranger Things finale in theaters on New Year's, and then even Narnia is gonna be releasing in IMAX next next fall in like in a somewhat traditional manner. It's gonna have a wide release, but only in IMAX, which is like almost like you're on the opposite end, like we're only screening our movie in IMAX. But it does seem like before this deal has gone through that there's some interest at Netflix to get into a theatrical space. So I'm hoping that that's signaling a possible shift in attitude towards it, just because like you think of, they make movies that feel like they are designed for theatrical and that they're leaving, I mean, they're focused on money and then they're leaving money on the table by not releasing them in theaters. Like something like K-pop Demon Hunters, obviously massive movie. I think that you look at something like Zootopia 2, which just came out, we're going to talk about later, and the money that made, it's like they have to be looking at that and asking themselves, why are we not making that money? Why are we not releasing this movie in theaters? Just because the idea of like it's harder to trace how much a project is bringing in a streaming model, like one specific thing. And so I think that theaters help that. Even something like Frankenstein from this year, which we talked about in the last episode, I think that movie is like perfect for theaters. I think they would have done very well having that in a wide release. And even over the last few years they've done like these limited releases in New York and LA for their films for awards eligibility. But I think like we're really seeing them flirt with it, and I wonder if this could be the step over the line. And bring it back to kind of what I was saying about IP, I don't think you can make the IP movies that you're getting with Warner without um, without having a theatrical release. Like you cannot make DC movies or Harry Potter movies and just release them straight to streaming and expect to make a profit. And I don't even think that's me being optimistic. I think that's just the reality of it and what the budgets of those type of films are. And I think Netflix wants money, and I think I think that truly like theatrical is going to be a better return on investment for those types of endeavors. And I think too, like Netflix has never had access to that kind of IP before. So we don't even really have a comparable metric to face it against. Like we've seen them try to get into that space, like they did those Zack Snyder movies, the Russo brothers did, the Electric State this year, just like complete flops. Like Netflix is not in the business of making blockbuster movies, if that makes sense. I think they want to be, and I think they realize that they don't have the sauce, even if they try to get whoever they perceive can make them a blockbuster movie. Um, they can't find that magic, and I think that might also be an element of this acquisition because they're just not in the business of that, and it feels like Warner really is. I think it is a little worrying for like we look at the last year, some of the smaller to mid-tier films, One Battle, Sinners, Weapons, even Final Destination, right? Um, Taking chances on those types of films. Where does that fall in this landscape? And I think that is really worrying because, I mean, like those are some of I feel like of the 2020s. Sinners and One Battle are like absolutely iconic theatrical experiences, and losing that would be just horrible. Um, I think it is interesting. I mean, obviously, we have to take statements being made by executives and CEOs to ease the worries of people with a grain of salt. But Zaslav, who is the current CEO of Warner Discovery, has stated that Warner they're intending to kind of keep it as its own branch within like ownership of Netflix, which I think could be an interesting possibility. Because he says that he intends to stay kind of as the head of that, and I don't know. I'm like, are we just biding time until it's eventually absorbed by Netflix, or is there really a concerted effort to make Warner feel like a studio within within Netflix that kind of is doing their own thing, and that's where theatrical releases can happen. So I think we have to keep an eye on that. We can only hope because also like that would save a ton of jobs too because you're keeping the structure of Warner, and it's not just being absorbed into Netflix. So I think that's my personal hope of where we're at. Um, but yeah, what can the industry do? I think very interesting thoughts have been floated in terms of preserving the theatrical experience. Netflix is very, I think, concerned with Oscars. And I think that if you found a way if you found a way to block them off from that, they would just adapt. And what I've heard posed is that the Oscars could impose a rule in which it needs to be movies need to be released in at least 500 theaters to be eligible for the Oscars, which I think would be fair because it feels like Netflix just meets the bare minimum awards qualifications right now. I think we're also hearing about the DGA going and talking to Netflix, talking to Warner about this, and so I'm interested to hear what will come from that. Obviously, Christopher Nolan just became the head of the DGA. Um, but yeah, I think, and then back into the political aspect of it, I think this question as to will Trump even pass this? Not that he cares about monopolies, but because his team is Paramount. Paramount, the family at the head of Paramount are his boys. Like that's his crew. Um, and I could see a petty world in which he blocks the Netflix deal, passes the Paramount deal. I think that's kind of where we're at. And I mean, this is all evolving in breaking news, but from the last I saw, Paramount doesn't seem to be giving up. They're going to try to have another hostile bid, even after it seems like we know how it's gonna boil out with Netflix and Warner. It seems like the Ellisons over at Paramount still want to keep going, so that's gonna be interesting to see. But yeah, I think out of the two, Netflix is honestly probably more likely to let Warner proceed artistically, and also, what I was talking about with this like quote unquote structure of the company. I think Netflix would probably retain more jobs, whereas Paramount is very similar to Warner and would just say, we just want the IP, we just want the resources. Um, but artistically, I think Netflix would maintain it more than Paramount. I think both are not great, but I think Paramount seems to be very interested in molding the culture in a very alpha MAGA direction. And I think that when we talk about how great the last year of Warner has been, it's been the direction. Like, it's not just been the financial success of these movies in theaters that they're connecting, but that they're culturally connecting, that they're artistically connecting. And I think that that's the core of it. And I think we can fight for theatrical, but if those stories aren't even making it through the doors, I don't know like what we can do. And I say this as a pretty like skeptical person about Netflix. I'm not the biggest Netflix fan. I would say I use Netflix less than most people. Um, but I think out of these two, I think it's the better option. I think it's a little sad that we didn't see other people kind of coming to bat a little more. I think it was interesting when Universal was still in the conversation. I think that would be a decent pairing, but it seems like they fell out pretty quick. And the only other one I can think of that would probably make sense, which was at least my kind of hope with all of this, would have been actually Apple, Apple TV. Also, again, not amazing. Any consolidation of corporate powers is not great. It's like you don't really want to be rooting for any of them. But I think in terms of monopoly, it feels like they operate in such like Apple TV at least operates in such a small niche space, and like artistically it's a good pair with Warner, I feel, and like they're just doing different things, so I don't feel like it would be horrible, and I think that would have been great, but that's not the world we live in. um but back to Paramount, I think a counterpoint to their like supposed desire for control over the messaging of their films is the upcoming film they have with the creators of South Park and PG Lang being Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free. Um, that film feels like it goes against everything that Paramount wants. I don't know if that has to do with contracts that were cut before the Ellisons came in that still need to be honored. Um, but from what I know, they need to make that movie and release it in theaters, and they're required to do that. Um, and they can't interfere at all, which obviously is a great deal for the South Park guys and PG Lang. But I do feel like that's more of a remnant of a deal made before the Ellisons came in, because that film's been in the works now for probably 2-3 years. I do think it's very funny that today, as a recording on Friday, Disney announced that Avengers Endgame, would be re-released in theaters next fall, as well as Star Wars original print being released in 2027 for the 50th anniversary for the first time. I want to say at least since the 90s, if not the 80s. Um, and like just like on the heels of this Netflix news, and that just feels like such a big middle finger. I feel like those announcements were probably planned ahead, but I mean serendipity for them, especially when it feels like they're kind of down a little. But I mean, it's hard to say that when they're still making the most successful movies of each year. But Disney is down in a way. Um, but cinema has survived through so much, like latest being COVID. But you look back to stuff happening in the 50s, 60s, even similar things of consolidation in film history, and the theatrical experience has survived through it. I think that we will survive this. Um, I'm I'm wary. I don't think this is a good thing. I don't want the wrong kind of like impression to come from this. I'm just trying to be optimistic in terms of how can this work. Um, and so I'm hoping that it does work for the sake of everything. I think we're in a spot that feels inevitable. It feels like Warner's fate was decided upon 3 years ago now, if not earlier. Um, but obviously, like it's set in stone 3 years ago, and we've been on a crash course with this moment for a while now. Um, so Netflix and Warner, we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. But I mean, all you can hope is that it goes well and that Warner is able to keep doing their thing and that as many jobs can stay as possible. I think that's really really what you have to hope. But I think all this conversation is like good transition into this week's films. Very good segue on my behalf. But we're talking J. Kelly Train Dreams, two new Netflix movies, both vying for awards this year, and like pretty hard to see in theaters. I was not able to see them in theaters, so I think it's relevant. I think these are movies that would be amazing to see in theaters, but they're not playing anywhere near me. But I'm excited to talk about them. We'll get into it in just a moment. Okay, so first up, Jay Kelly. This is Noah Baumbach's latest feature, penned by himself and Emily Mortimer. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a gorgeous film. I think it's so saturated and beautiful visually, but just like in vibe and tone and story, the whole film has this old Hollywood feel, but set in contemporary Hollywood. And it doesn't feel forced or like that's the point of the movie. It just feels like it's adapting those classic kind of Hollywood films from the 40s and 50s and introducing elements of our modern time into them, which I think is great. Very much on the backs of Clooney and Sandler. Like this movie is them. And I think both of them do a great job here. Um, just like two great performances. I think we'll get into it a little bit later, but I'm like this movie works because the two of them I think work very very well. And then around them you have this kind of cast of everyone popping in and out. You have Jim Broadbent, um, in a great role, like very moving. I think you have Billy Crudup, and like so interesting. Some of like my favorite line reads of the year, just like awesome. Laura Dern, obviously, is always great. And like for the time that she's in this film, she's awesome. Greta Gerwig, electric. I was like, she's in it so little and like doesn't really have too much going on, but just like she's just great. Like she's awesome. And then you have Jay Kelly, the character, his two daughters, Daisy and Jess. One played by Riley Keough, and the other is played by an actress who was in Asteroid City. They're both great. You have Patrick Wilson in it. You have Isla Fisher. You have Alba. I don't know how to say her last name. I think it's Roch. Roch. Okay. Like let's take it back. Rochweiler. That's what I'm gonna say. That's how it's gonna be. And I practiced this before too, and I can't. My mouth can't get it down. But yeah, I think it really works with this crew coming in and out and in and out. And it keeps the pace feeling really really tight. And like beyond them, there's more people showing up. Like that's just a sampling of some of the people and characters popping in. It's a very kind of meandering plot, in like a very classic way. I don't find it to be slow. I find it to be always being infused with energy and new ideas, which I think works, but we're never on like a clear path, which I think makes it very engaging to watch. Um, but yeah, I mean the film. Okay, obviously we're gonna get into spoilers. For both these films, like that's just how it's gonna be. But um, we're following Jay Kelly, famous actor. He's like, I mean, he's literally George Clooney. Like that's kind of the vibe is that it's basically George Clooney pastiching himself, and it's like an older mentor actor of his passes away. He goes to the funeral and meets up with an old friend played by Billy Crudup, who feels as if Jay Kelly took the career he was destined for. And this scene that they share in the bar and then, following in the parking lot is, I think, one of my favorite scenes in the film. Like, just the energy between the two of them is crazy. And, like, Billy Crudup absolutely kills his screen time. But, like, it kind of, that plus the death of Jim Broadbent's character set Jay off on this, like, spiritual journey, but also it feels like nervous breakdown. And I think that is like a very like fun energy in like a bad way, but it's like leading him to kind of like introspect on his life, um and like in a very almost like Christmas Carol fashion. Um, and then so he ends up following his daughter to Italy on a trip. He wants to connect with his family, he wants to spend more time with his family. If you're listening to this, I assume you know the movie, so I'm not like gonna get bogged down in plot. I'm like being very bare in terms of getting into it. But I think once we get to the train heading to the film festival, like that is really, I think, when it kind of kicked in for me. I was like, the vibe on that train was just very delightful. Like, we spend an extended period of time of the film on this train, and I think that's when you kind of get to the heart of what's best about this movie. There's like a certain cynicism and realism from Jay Kelly's team, mainly Adam Sandler and Laura Dern, mixed with a very like wholesome innocence that Jay Kelly's bringing. It's also very out of touch and pretentious, but it's lovable in a way, and the way that he's connecting with all the people on the train, and the way that the people around him in his personal life view him. He's like a baby. And I think the stuff we get with Sandler and Dern there is just amazing. I think everything between them was super super interesting. It left me like really wanting more of that relationship. I think we'll kind of get into a little bit more of that as we get more into Sandler, but that's kind of where we start getting into these flashbacks of memories that we're seeing Jay occupy. And they're so beautifully done and cerebral. He's entering these memories from the scene he's in, and just the sets in this film are amazing. Like, I'm specifically thinking about it from when he's entering these memories, but just in general, the sets are great. Um, but yeah, he enters these memories, and it's very like pretentious, but it kind of works because that's the character. And so in a way, like, he like that, a character flaw of his is how pretentious and self-involved he is, and like that that like is like reflected in the mode of the film, which I think works very well. But I mean, I do think that these flashbacks don't fully work. I think they are a little bit like cliched in what they're saying. Like, he's not necessarily like learning things that are super deep about himself. I think that what they're communicating is not the most groundbreaking, but the execution is like pretty good. I think another thing that didn't fully hit with me is like the father character played by Stacy Keach. He was kind of like so. I feel like the symbolism of, you know, his like Jay resenting his father, and then as they kind of talk about in the movie, being so afraid of replicating that he basically just didn't want to be a father at all, and then failed his daughters in that way. Um, I think it works. It's heavy-handed, but something about the father character just, I think, fell a little bit flat. He's obviously there as a mirror, but I think he worked a lot better in terms of how he paralleled Sandler and Jay Kelly's relationship. Sandler playing Ron, Jay Kelly's manager, and that is super duper interesting because he's almost more of a father to Jay than his own father is. And I think Sandler pulls that off really, really well. Almost babying him and feeling this unconditional need to protect Jay, which he even says to Laura Dern's character, who's the publicist, and he's like, "Don't you have this unconditional love for him?" And I think that their relationship is super, super interesting, and I think really the heart of what this movie is getting at. The whole movie is, I think, resting on Sandler. I think he gives an amazing supporting performance. When the film starts, I'm just like, wow, like Sandler, like when he really wants to slip into a role and just like do it, he disappears and it's amazing and it's so awesome. And like this one isn't super different, I feel, than himself. Like it's not Uncut Gems where he's playing this character that's it's very bold. This is more, I don't know, it's a closer to reality. So when the film started, I was like, wow, he really slips away. Like this is a great performance. But as we just go through the movie, like there are scenes in here where Sandler is acting his ass off, and it's amazing. It's like truly so good. But I feel like he says something that almost strikes me as what the heart of the movie is. And he says to Jay that we are Jay Kelly. Jay is no longer himself. Like the idea of celebrity means that you are almost no longer a person. You're a brand and a like entity, and there's a team of people behind you. And so Jay can't function without all these people, and we slowly see them all drop out throughout the movie. But truly, Ron is the backbone of what Jay Kelly, the idea, is. And I think seeing how much he cares is really unique and really interesting. Um, and it almost feels like Ron cares more than Jay, which is obviously the point. And like what that leads to makes their relationship and dynamic super, super like engaging to watch. Um, but everything that he goes through in here, it's like I was wanting him to leave. I was like, you have to leave. Jay does not care about you. Like you know what I mean? So I was really rooting for that. And the scene that he shared with Patrick Wilson again, like amazing scene. The scene where Sandler is leaving in the taxi, amazing scene. The scene when Clooney's dancing, amazing scene. Like to me that is the heart and story of this movie because that plot is so relatable and you can really sink your teeth into that. But that's the B plot, and then we have Jay on this self-aggrandizing adventure in the A plot. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the film is tragic and sad. We don't get a cop out ending where everyone shows up for his award and him being honored, and is there with him at the end. We don't get that. No one shows up for him besides Ron, played by Sandler. Um, but I think the end is still satisfying in that he accepts the fact that this is where the last 35 years of his life has led him in his relationships. And we see him, in a way, mend things with Ron. And I think that is the satisfaction that we get from this. And I think it's really beautiful. I think that's a really beautiful way to end it. Um, it's a very, very funny film. Um, I thought the cheesecake bit was brilliant. Um, and then just some of the best line reads I've heard all year, like the calamari with lemon aioli sauce is $18 line. I had to write that down. If you know, you know. Infinite COVID. I had to rewind and watch that again. That was very funny. But yeah, I mean the humor of this movie is very, very, very funny. But the ending, I think the ending is very, very interesting because we end on Jay's honoring ceremony, playing clips of real Clooney movies throughout his career. And in a way, I mean, I think when people say this, it's annoying, and I think I wish I thought of a better way to say it, but I think it's brave. Like I'm doing air quotes as I say that, but it's brave of Clooney to kind of put himself on blast in that kind of way and like really draw this comparison between Jay and himself. I think it could be confusing, but I think it's such a meta way to end it. Um, and I mean, I think also like Jay Kelly phonetically like feels so much like George Clooney. And so I'm kind of thinking it throughout the whole time, and like Ben Affleck feels a lot like Ben Affleck, obviously. Um, and so I think that Clooney infusing himself into this character and letting it mirror the his real life is like a super interesting choice to make. I think like also another real world thing, they kept talking about like the Lewis brothers, and I was like, could be the Coens, but like I think I lean towards the Safdies. He's like, they made me do crack at their bar in Bushwick. I was like, I feel like that has to be the Safdies and not the Coens. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, so I'm like, I think the George Clooney comparisons are very interesting. I feel like we don't dive into it much beyond the surface, but I think it's an interesting element to introduce, and gives it like similar to like I love being John Malkovich, but it gives it a similar feeling to that. Jay himself does not go on the most deep or interesting journey, which I think is one of like the flaws of this film. Our exploration of him is pretty hollow, and I think that's reflective of who he is as a character. So I don't even think it's a flaw of the film. It's maybe just my personal connection to the characters. And I think that's what makes Sandler so compelling in juxtaposition. It's like I like Jay, and I think that at least half the movie has to be about Jay. Um, but I think it needed to be more of a two-hander, more of a, like a We Are Jay Kelly type film with Sandler, like having more and more development. Because I think Ron was just integral to making everything work, and I think we needed more of that. But yeah, overall, I thought it was really good. I really did enjoy this movie. I think it's really interesting. I think it's worth the watch. I think amazing performances all throughout this movie. Amazingly directed by Noah Baumbach. I love the script. I think I think it could have more, but like visuals and vibe and style kind of outweigh the script in a way. Um, but yeah, Oscar chances. I love to talk Oscars a little, so we're gonna talk them a little. I think Best Actor at this point is too competitive for Clooney to tap into at the Oscars, but I think Sandler has a chance. I think he's either at like 5 or 6 right now, so he's either like I think the last spot or just like on the outside looking in. Um, at first I was like, oh, I hope he gets nominated just as like kind of sorry for Uncut Gems getting completely snubbed, but by the end, I really felt like he turned in an amazing, beautiful performance, and that was probably the standout of this movie for me. I think, obviously it's gonna be hard. Sean Penn and Benicio are like, I feel like pretty locked in there. I haven't seen Hamnet, but it feels like Paul Mescal is pretty locked in there. I think Stellan Skarsgård is extremely locked in there. So I think it's Sandler versus Elordi right now in Frankenstein. And like personal taste, I would probably give it to Sandler. I think I gravitate towards that type of character more, but like both him and Elordi are amazing, and it's like it's an abundance of riches with amazing supporting performances this year. I haven't seen Hamnet or Sentimental Value, so I can't like judge that as of now, but I don't know, we'll see. I think Sandler has a really good chance. Best Picture, I feel like this started off feeling like more of a Best Picture contender, but as we've gone through, I really don't think it's gonna make it. I don't think there's a chance we're gonna get like that many Netflix movies, and it feels like Train Dreams and Frankenstein, which we're about to talk about, are pretty locked in. I feel like I might also be forgetting another Netflix film that feels like a strong contender, but I just with the lineup, I don't see Jay Kelly cracking Best Picture. I think director again, like it's just too competitive. I think Noah Baumbach did a great job here, but I feel like in this year, like I don't think it's gonna happen. I could see cinematography. I think it's a beautifully shot film. I think the colors are amazing. The compositions are amazing. Um, I would, if it was like my personal five, I think this would probably make the five. It depends on. I need to see more movies, obviously, but like out of what I've seen, like I think this feels like a strong contender, and same with score. I think honestly, besides Sandler, score is honestly most likely. You have a Nick Britell score, and it's awesome. It's great. I mean, the score is fantastic. It's beautiful, and so I feel pretty good about that. I'm not like super familiar with the race is looking like right now for score, but I think Nicholas Britell doing the score is definitely going to help this movie out. But yeah, um, Jay Kelly literally just came out, so please check it out. I think it's a great movie. I think it's worth the watch. And yeah, I guess let's get into Train Dreams. Okay, so Train Dreams is directed by Clint Bentley and it's written by him and Greg Quidar. It's somewhat of a follow up to Sing Sing, which I learned after the fact. Sing Sing was directed by Greg and then written by him and Clint, and then they kind of switched off for directing duties on this one. Kind of like similar to what's going on right now with The Brutalist and The Testament of Anne Lee. Um, but I think like as a follow up to Sing Sing, I'm like that does not even clock or register because Train Dreams is completely different. Um, it's a very contemplative film where we're watching Robert's. It's a very contemplative film where we're watching Joel Edgerton's character Robert. We're watching his life unfold as he goes through. The shooting style, I would say, very much focuses on realism. There's a lot of ultra wide lenses. Um, Either the shutter speed was really high or they were shooting at 60 frames a lot outside, and it gave it a very unique and like ultra real look. And I found the ways that they were shooting nature just to be so beautiful. I think like obviously so much of this movie takes place outside, and I think the ways that they decided to capture um, the nature I think was really beautiful. I think there were so many scenes too I'm thinking of at like sunrise, sunset, and it was just gorgeous. Um, but beat to beat, moment to moment, um, it's very kind of like we're going with Robert. Um, I think it can be very ethereal. I think with the titular Train Dreams, like those sequences built a lot of like dread and tension, I think really well. But often we're just with Robert in the situations he's in, which I think works really well. Um, it's a very sincere film despite it being so sad. I think it's very optimistic. Um, I think one of my biggest issues with the film is that in a lot of ways, Robert kind of can feel like a non character that's anchored by an amazing performance. So I feel like Joel is really doing amazing here. But like we're seeing Robert go through things, but I don't feel like I know Robert. And I think that's by design. I think I'm gonna get into that in like a little bit, but it'll be things where it's like he hates racism and he witnesses this and he doesn't really do anything, but he's an ally to different like groups, but he's not taking action when he's seeing these things happen in front of him, and we're supposed to know that he's not approving of that and he doesn't like it, but it's not really part of his character that he has this inaction going on. And it's just like it feels like he's just a vessel for us to like watch this unfold, which I think makes him a very realistic and like non-cinematic character. He's very much an everyman, and so I don't think it's a failure of the film. I think it's more to do with like my taste. Um, but I think it's very interesting choice to portray him in that kind of way. Um, I think it's a movie more about his trauma and like less about this man specifically. And I think that speaks more to an experience, which we'll get into. I think, and then when Carrie Condon shows up, I think she's kind of the savior of this film in like a reflexive way, in like a good way. She injects energy into it, and I think similarly, she injects energy into Robert's life when she shows up. And I think she does great. Her accent is not always great, but I always love Carrie Condon, so I'm like, I don't care. I think Felicity Jones also amazing, amazing, amazing. Um, I mean, last year her performance in The Brutalist was probably one of my favorites of the whole year. I think like she definitely made that movie. Um, but I feel like again like her character and relationship with Robert feel very two-dimensional and generic. Like I don't necessarily buy into their chemistry, and it kind of feels more like the man meets the woman and they get married and they have kids because that's just what happens. And I think in a way that's by design for what they're trying to do here. So I'm not even knocking it for that, but it's not necessarily the type of thing I'm always like relating to. I do think something that's funny, watching this and Jay Kelly so close to each other is um, when Robert is saying goodbye to his daughter. I think it's like maybe the first or second time. It's like it's better for him just not to say anything because she's too young to really process it. And like Sandler's character kind of goes through a similar thing with his son and Jay Kelly. I was like, Netflix with this like parents not saying goodbye mandate. I don't know what it is, but yeah, overall I think Felicity does a great job, and like you feel the impact of that midpoint. But um yeah, I feel like I kind of wanted more from the relationship, especially when I'm thinking back to The Brutalist, which I can't help but think about it. Like, similar time period. It was only a year ago. Um, and yeah, I'm like, but she's a great inclusion here. I think, again, like, another amazing supporting performance is William H. Macy. He doesn't have a ton of screen time, but if you've seen it, you know, I mean, his monologue is amazing. He does so much with a small moment. I found like that was one of the most impactful moments of my connection to Robert too. Was I really felt his connection with I think his name was like Peeper, um, and like that being the kind of turning point for him where he had this realization that sooner or later like he is going to meet a similar fate in the line of work that they're in, and he wants to spend time with his family, and that being the inflection point to go home. And then he gets back and obviously the cabin is gone, and I just think that was gut wrenching. I think not having a clue that was going to happen, like I that really did hit. That was really tough. And he's oblivious and naive pre the fire, and I think that just completely works as an audience member. Like, you feel like William H. Macy's death has led him to turn this leaf, and he's going home, and we're going to see him spend the second half of this film moving on in life with his family, and then they're just gone, and it's so deep into the movie. And I think that is one of the most brilliant choices of the movie. It works so well. And again, like similar to Jay Kelly, again, great ensemble of characters coming in and out. Like so many, so many, so many great actors and characters that just show up here, and it's amazing. And I think, like, boiling this movie down, I think it's an untold story that is probably so universal to a lot of people at this time. Um, and I think that makes it important in a way. It feels like this really could have happened, and I think it humanizes and puts so much empathy on figures that you don't necessarily think about all the time. And I think leaving Robert as depersonalized in a way and relying more on Edgerton delivering just like a show-stopping performance, you create a character that you can kind of project onto, um, and I think that's really smart. Um, the ending is just so beautiful too. Like that was probably my favorite bit. Was like the last 10 minutes. It's like he's spent his life hoping that they're gonna come back, waiting at the cabin, and he finally reaches this age, um, and he lets himself go out into the world, and especially that shot in the mirror where it said he hadn't looked at himself in the mirror for 10 years. Um, Beautiful, and him at the cinema, beautiful, and him in the plane, beautiful. I mean, it's like truly, truly, truly like you have to see it. I think like I can't put to words what that ending feels like because I feel like the movie sticks the landing in that sense, and that was like very, very, very powerful. Um, but overall, like it's a deeply sad movie, and you get to live with this very real, non-sensationalized pain. And I think that's special and unique, and and I think that this movie does does like so much with that. I think, and two, the third person narration emphasizes this kind of depersonalized pain. Um, and obviously it's adapted from a novella. Um, so I think that also kind of lends itself to the narration, but it makes it feel like this is a fable and it's epic, but it's also small and this could be anyone with the way that the narrator talks about Robert. Um, and I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. I think Oscar chances. Honestly, I think this movie is looking pretty good for the Oscars. Like, I think Edgerton probably has a Best Actor nom in the bag. I feel like him and Ethan Hawke have to be probably competing. I'm thinking they're probably behind. Um, I don't even know off the top of my head. Probably Timothy Leonardo, Wagner Mora, and man, I forgot. I feel like those three, and then Edgerton, and then Hawk, Michael B. Jordan, Jesse Plemons. I feel like those four are probably vying for the last two spots. Um, I think this one also feels like it's gonna hit Best Picture. I think with these kind of bigger blockbuster movies shaping out to be so divisive, like Frankenstein, like Wicked, like Avatar, they're not necessarily the smash hits that people necessarily thought they would be critically. And I think Train Dreams is gonna pull ahead a little in terms of votership, and I think it's gonna make it into Best Picture. I think I see this movie getting a lot of love from the Academy. I think cinematography also feels. I feel pretty confident in calling that now, not even knowing the cinematography field. I feel like this is right up the alley of what they would nominate. And I also feel pretty good about adapted screenplay. I think that this is a really tight script and it's really measured and shows restraint. Um, and so I think it's going to nab an adapted screenplay nom too. But obviously, we're going to talk more Oscars when we get into the season. But yeah, I mean, that's Train Dreams. Again, check it out. Please watch this. Both of these are great original films on Netflix, worth your time. I really did enjoy both of them. So, yes, check them out. We're going to get into the news. We have some great stories, obviously overshadowed by our first story at the top, but I think they're going to be very interesting. I think you're going to like them. So, yeah, I'll see you there. Okay, so I feel like any headlines like we usually cover on here are overshadowed by this Netflix Warner news. So I'm gonna hit like one that feels really important, like an update that feels really important from the last um, couple weeks since the last episode, which is Zootopia and Wicked opened and they are going crazy at the box office. Zootopia is approaching 700 mil. As of it's Friday, December 5th. That's after one weekend and then weekdays. Um, and that's crazy for for a movie in 2025. That's very insane to make almost 700 million in the opening week. I think probably after this weekend it'll be close to a billion. I would guess at least around 900 million. I think Zootopia 2 is just going to be like, I mean, I think it's going to be up there as probably, I mean, can I see it hitting 2 billion? I don't know. I don't know. I think it'll be the biggest movie of the year. But I don't know if I can see it hitting 2 billion. I think it's going to be battling Avatar, Fire and Ash a little, and I think that might like take the legs out from under it, even if they're counter programming. But I think they're both gonna do well. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see a movie like going like this, especially how it's performing in China. Like it just didn't seem like movies were gonna perform like that in China anymore. So, so I mean, and hey, I heard it was good. I heard it was pretty good. Like less propaganda than the first film. They're more PI detectives on the run from the cops and like Chinatown feeling and like very anti-racist, very kind of pro-immigration. So I'm like, hey, you're kind of diving in deeper to social topics from the first movie. Like it's a kids movie, but like I can appreciate that. Like I can appreciate getting into that, especially like I feel like the best kids movies are all allegorical. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see a movie doing well. You know, I think Wicked. I mean, also crazy, 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 crazy opening weekend, especially domestic. I think it's been a little soft overseas overall, but that opening weekend was unbelievable to the point where they're like, we might just add on to it. Like we might do more Wicked, which I think I think leaving it. I haven't seen it, so like mind you, I'm speaking more just like knowledge of Wicked. I think they shouldn't leave it where it's at, um, because well, let me get into this. It needs double its current standing to match the first film, and I just don't. I don't see that happening. I don't know if I even see it crossing like 700 million, like 650, um, which would leave it lagging a bit behind, like a good amount behind Wicked 1 when you'd think it would overcome it. Um, I think there's two main reasons for that. I think Act 2 is really like hard to adapt. I think it was kind of a mistake to split it up into two parts. Um, I think Act 2 is just not as good or beloved as Act 1. So like we're coming off all the hype for that first movie, and you kind of have to hope people come in and are going to enjoy Act 2. And I think also critically it feels like obviously it did not hit in the same way as the first one, to the point where I'm doubting even in a lot of ways its awards strength. I think it's that much of a dud critically. Um, so I feel like I don't even want to put the blame on them. I'm like, I think part of it's just Act 2. And so if you want to go for a third one, like you just have to do it right. You know what I mean? Just like do something original, go all out, have fun, make it look good, maybe like go a little harder with the visuals. I don't want to, hey. um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see it probably be a little bit of a disappointment, but not a flop or a failure by any means. But um, yeah, I'm interested to see how it's gonna fare in award season, because I think it's still gonna be there. I just don't think it's gonna be a juggernaut in the same kind of way. Another thing that happened this, I think, past week was the Gotham Awards, which is probably personally my like favorite awards show. And I think it gives good indications as to where we're going for Oscars and stuff. Because I feel like that's the one everyone likes to predict. Like I like predicting the Oscars probably the most. Um, but hey, we're gonna get into some predictions in a little bit. But I think some interesting things to glean from it. Obviously, Best Feature was one battle. I think deserved. That's probably where I'm at too. But something I thought was really interesting was a sweep from It Was Just an Accident, directed by Jafar Panahi, winning Best Director, Original Screenplay, and Best International. And I think, I mean, that it's been showing dominance in a lot of these early shows. Um, I think that's something to really, really keep an eye on because I think he can make his way into Best Director. I think this is feeling more and more like a lock for Best Picture. I feel good about it in international, or sorry, yeah, international. I feel good about it in original screenplay. I feel good about it in director. I feel good about it in picture. Um, I mean, it felt like Sentimental Value was the like front runner and like lock on Best International. I feel like this one, this might be the new front runner for that, and I think it looks amazing. I can't wait to see it. I hope to see it super soon. I was in Rome at Rome Film Festival like I want to say a month and a half ago, and I almost saw it then. I ended up seeing If I Had Legs, I Would Kick You just for like time reasons. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see this. I'm excited to see like how well it's doing because it seems important and like very, very good. And so I'm happy to see that being recognized. I think another interesting thing that I picked up from the Gothams is that Wonmi Masaku um, won Best Supporting Performance for her part in Sinners. And I think that that is huge because supporting actress has felt like we do not know who's gonna make it, what's gonna happen, and especially like how Sinners is gonna do in terms of acting nominations. Just because all the categories are so tight, and it seems like there's a world where it gets shut out of all of them, and I mean, like I feel like you cannot shut out all of these Sinners cast members, and I think Wumi Masaku is amazing in that film, and that is super deserved. So I really hope to see her pull ahead more in the supporting actress conversations because she deserves to be there, and I think that she's kind of been left out of them up to this point. But yeah, the Gotham Awards, I would check out the rest of the results too. But yeah, I feel like when it's all said and done, and I've seen the movies of the year, I tend to lean most towards the Gotham Awards in terms of taste. But honestly, over the last couple of years, I feel like the Oscars has been getting more and more aligned with what I'm into. I don't know if that's like, I don't know, maybe I'm like joining the hive mind or like becoming a boomer, or I don't know, or it's maybe they're just getting taste. So we'll see. But yeah, now we're already over an hour in, and we're about to get into predictions for the Golden Globes. So, okay, hi, this is Joey from the future. It took me longer to edit this episode than I thought, and the Golden Globe nominations came out. So, there's no point in talking about the predictions, but I'm going to talk about what the noms are in a future episode, so stay tuned for that. But I'm just going to take you to the end of the episode now. But yeah, that about wraps it up for this episode. We're right in an hour and a half. What I've been watching, I've been so busy the past few weeks with like projects and writing and like I'm currently applying to grad school, so that was just like so much time. So I haven't watched a ton, but Nouvelle Vague I watched, very much liked it. I'm a Breathless fan, and I enjoyed experiencing that. After The Hunt, I got around to seeing. I'm a huge Luca fan, and I was not like as disappointed with it as I thought I would be. Like, it's certainly not great, and it doesn't compare to his greats, but I don't think it's as bad as it was made out to be. I'm like, it would have been interesting to have had this pod going when that came out because I would have thought it was very interesting to like chat about it. I'm like, there's so much conversation to be had with that movie, especially like I grew up in New Haven, around New Haven, so like that is all very like familiar and like just very interesting movie. Um, and I mean, I thought it was solid. I thought it was solid. Finished the new Smiling Friends season. Loved it. I'm a big fan. I don't know what else there's to say. I mean, it's fire. It's fire. I am worried about the Rick and Mortification, but I don't know. I think we just gotta hold strong. I think they have to end the show before it goes too long. I think that's the truth. And then again, like every episode, I've been saying I love LA. Like I've been watching this show, and it's good. As this season has progressed, I think they've found their footing. I think they've caught their stride. It's a more like interconnected episode to episode than I thought it was gonna be, but I don't mind that. I'm chewing on a good story right now. So yeah, I'm enjoying I Love LA, and I did watch Stranger Things, Volume 1 of Season 5, and I think I think I'm gonna wait to talk about it. I think I'm gonna maybe talk about it when the whole thing's out, start of January. Maybe we'll do a Stranger Things episode. Hey, that's a good segue. We're tying this episode up in a bow. Netflix is infecting everything. An episode of this movie podcast might be dedicated to a Netflix streaming show. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you. Thank you for listening. I appreciate if you made it this far. You've been here for almost an hour and a half probably. So I appreciate that. And yeah, I hope to be back soon. I hope to cover another movie soon. Maybe, honestly, maybe Wake Up Dead Man soon. Who knows? We'll see. But anyways, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you all in the next episode. Hopefully we have a guest, because I just talked to myself for an hour and a half. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.